Welcome to the Science and History page, which is so boring it might put you to sleep. Let's learn together why and how Zeus overthrew his father. We know. It was more like a chaotic mess where everything was mixed up, and it was unclear what was what. The ancient Greeks called it chaos. Chaos wasn't a god. It had no character, no voice, no face. It was simply the beginning. And from chaos, the first beings were born. Gaia takes the stage. From chaos, Gaia emerged first. Gaia, that is, Mother Earth. You can imagine that as soon as Gaia appeared, she said, "Okay, we need order." Gaia wasn't alone. With her, Tartaros, the deep, dark abyss. Eros, the power of attraction, desire, and bonding. Nyx, night. Erebos, darkness, were born. But Gaia's main task was to build the world. She raised the mountains, spread out the plains, prepared the seas. Then she thought, it would be difficult to fill this world all by myself. And that's exactly when Uranus entered the story. Uranus, the Sky Father. Gaia created Uranus, the sky, from within herself. Uranus was above, Gaia was below. The sky and the earth came together. Children were born from this union. And here things got a little complicated. The Titans are born. Among Gaia and Uranus children, the most important were the Titans. There were a total of 12 Titans. They were powerful, large, and despite being gods, they were considered somewhat primitive. Among them were Okeanos, oceans; Hyperion, light; Iapetos, ancestors; Rhea, motherhood; and the youngest, but the most ambitious, Kronos. But Uranus didn't love his children very much. Uranus's fear. Uranus feared the power of his children. The Cyclops and the 100-armed ones, born after the Titans, particularly disturbed him. These beings were too powerful, too terrifying, and, in Uranus's opinion, too much. Therefore, Uranus did something cowardly. He imprisoned them in Tartarus, the deepest, darkest place in the earth. Kronos on the throne, but not at ease. Kronos became king of the Titans. The universe was now under his rule. But there was a problem. Uranus, upon his downfall, left Kronos a prophecy. One day, you too will be overthrown by your own child. This thought never left Kronos' mind. And Kronos' fear made him cruel. Rhea and the swallowed children. Kronos married his sister Rhea. Together they had children. But with each child born, Kronos did this. Hestia was born swallowed. Demeter was born swallowed. Hera was born swallowed. Hades was born swallowed. Poseidon was born swallowed. Yes, he really swallowed them. Rhea was helpless each time. But with the sixth child, she could no longer bear it. And here it is. The story of Zeus begins. As a result of this process, Rhea, who could no longer bear the deaths of her children, decided to make a plan to save her last child. Because she had given birth to 5 children. She had given all 5 to her husband with her own hands to be swallowed. And she knew that all 5 were in Kronos' stomach. This situation was too much to bear, not just for a mother, but even for a goddess. Therefore, when she became pregnant with her 6th child, Zeus, Rhea had already made her decision. This child will be saved at all costs. Rhea went to her mother Gaia to ask for help, hiding it from Kronos. Gaia already knew everything. Kronos' real fear, Uranus's prophecy, and even what would happen in the future. Mother and daughter made a plan together. The plan was very simple but very clever. Rhea would give birth to this child. A stone would be given to Kronos as the baby, while the real baby would be hidden. Thus, Kronos would think he had swallowed his last child, but the child would have survived. When the time came for her to give birth, Rhea quietly went to the island of Crete. It was remote, mountainous, and a place Kronos rarely visited. And there, in a cave on Crete, Zeus was born. Zeus was not born an ordinary baby. From the very first moment of his birth, he was very powerful, very lively. He observed his surroundings carefully and intelligently. He was unparalleled. But Rhea didn't have much time left. Fearing Kronos' discovery and the danger to her baby, Rhea had to leave immediately, entrusting her baby to trustworthy beings. Time was working against her. Rhea entrusted her baby Zeus to 3 beings. The first was the nymphs, the spirits of nature. The second was a goat named Amalthea. Yes, it was truly a goat. Rhea nurtured and raised Zeus. It fed and raised Zeus. The third group were the armored warriors called the Caretes. The Caretes' duty was very clear. When baby Zeus cried, they would strike their swords against their shields. Thus, they would drown out the sound of Zeus's crying. Because if Kronos heard the babies crying or noticed even a single thing, everything would be over. So, after leaving baby Zeus in the cave, Rhea returned to Kronos, trying to hide her tears. In her arms was a swaddled baby. What Kronos didn't know was that it wasn't a baby. Rhea had swaddled a stone in the shape of a baby. Kronos, who had swallowed his previous children without a problem, didn't suspect anything. He didn't look. He didn't ask. He didn't think. He didn't see. The fear of the prophecy and the intoxication of power had blinded him. He took the stone and, instantly, swallowed it. As Kronos swallowed the stone, Rhea thought to herself, "One day you will remember this." Meanwhile, baby Zeus continued to grow in his cave on Crete. Of course, this was not an ordinary childhood like that of humans. The goat Amalthea nourished baby Zeus with her milk. The nymphs taught Zeus about nature. Mountains, winds, and the sky were Zeus's playground. Zeus ran, climbed, asked, learned, and most importantly, listened. He learned what Kronos had done to his mother and siblings. He learned where his siblings were. And he learned the fate he had to live. Zeus's character, even as a child, was quite curious. He was as courageous as his father. But unlike his father, he wasn't blindly aggressive. He was quite intelligent. He wanted to understand first. Then he would make a plan. Gaia visited Zeus from time to time. She told him about the universe, the Titans, the prophecy, the war. And Zeus gradually realized, I didn't just survive. I survived because I have a purpose in life. Zeus grew very, very quickly. Gods already grew much faster than other beings, but Zeus grew even faster. When he emerged from infancy and stepped into youth, he was very strong, agile, and there was a sharp determination in his gaze. However, he didn't yet have a weapon or an army. The time hadn't come yet. First, he needed to approach his enemy Kronos calmly. Zeus went to Kronos' palace, concealing his identity. In some accounts, he disguised himself as a servant. According to some, he was disguised as a cupbearer. According to others, he was disguised as a cook. But the common point was this. Zeus secretly approached Kronos. And with Gaia's help, he prepared a drink for Kronos. This drink was magical, powerful, and its effect was certain. Kronos drank this drink. Kronos' stomach could not withstand this enchanted drink. Kronos began to vomit up all his children one by one. First Hestia came out. Then Demeter came out. Then Hera came out. Then Hades came out. And finally Poseidon came out. They were all alive. And because they were gods, they continued to grow in their father's stomach. Because gods could not be digested. The last thing to come out of Kronos' stomach was plain stone. By the time Kronos understood what had happened, it was too late. Facing him were his 6 children. And standing before them all, Zeus. And Zeus said, in a manner befitting mythology, yet simple, "It's over." The air in Kronos' palace was heavy. The walls were still strong, the columns still in place, but something was missing. Fear stood alone. The silent reverence that once stood behind the power was gone. It had been replaced by unease. Zeus stood before his siblings. He looked at each of them individually. There was neither arrogance nor haste in this gaze. Only determination. Hestia was calm. Her eyes were soft but watchful. Demeter surveyed her surroundings. She seemed to feel the pulse of the earth. Hera stood upright. The anger accumulating within her was like a steady fire. Poseidon's hands trembled, as if he wanted to summon the seas. Hades was silent. A silence friendly to shadows. They were siblings. But they were not yet a family. Zeus spoke. His voice was not raised, but everyone heard. We did not choose our past, he said. But we can choose the future. These words were a call. And everyone felt it. Kronos' last stand. Kronos rose from his throne. He was still great. He was still powerful. But for the first time, he wasn't sure. You are my children, he said. I created you. Zeus shook his head. No, he said. You hid us. But we became ourselves. Kronos became enraged. Anger is fear's most faithful friend. He summoned the Titans. The mountains moved. The ancient powers awakened. War was now inevitable. Old chains, new hopes. Zeus listened to Gaia's whispers. He remembered what had been forgotten. And he descended to Tartarus with his brothers. It was dark there. But darkness is not always evil. Sometimes it simply means oblivion. The Cyclops were chained. The 100-armed ones were silent. Zeus spoke before breaking the chains. This was important. I come to destroy the system that imprisoned you here, he said. If you are with me, you will not only be free. You will rebuild the world. That was enough. The weapons of the gods. The Cyclops worked. Fire, stone, and will united. When lightning struck Zeus's hand, the sky recognized him. When Poseidon grasped his trident, the seas swelled. When Hades donned his helmet, the shadows parted for him. These weapons were not ornaments. They were responsibility. Titanomachia, the 10-year battle. When the war began, the world endured as long as it could. Mountains shifted. The seas overflowed. The sky split open. The Titans were powerful, but resistant to change. Zeus and his siblings were in harmony. They acted together. Hera fought with her mind. Demeter controlled the earth. Hestia maintained order. Poseidon learned to channel his anger. Hades struck silently, but decisively. And Zeus. Zeus was the center. The fall of Kronos. 10 years later, Kronos was alone. He no longer had an army behind him. Only the past remained. You will be like me, said Kronos. Power will corrupt you too. Zeus paused before unleashing his lightning bolt. Perhaps, he said. But I will not rule with fear. Kronos was not killed. He was imprisoned. Because Zeus wanted to break the chain. Not to create a new one. Sharing and order. After the victory, the 3 siblings drew lots. Zeus took the sky. Poseidon the seas. Hades the underworld. This was not a division, but a balance. The rise of Olympus. Mount Olympus rose. The gods settled there. It was not just a palace. It was a center. Zeus sat there. He ascended the throne. But no one knelt before him. Because this throne had not been taken in fear. Zeus spoke. This order will not be perfect. But it will be just. And it will be subject to change. The sky accepted it. The thunder ceased. The earth breathed. And so, Zeus became the king of Olympus. With the end of the Titanomachy, War of the Titans, the universe lay in the wreckage of the greatest destruction it had ever witnessed. The 10-year war had cracked the heavens, boiled the seas, and profoundly shaken the very soul of the earth, Gaia. When Kronos and his followers were chained to the pitch-black darkness of Tartarus, the world was plunged into a deep silence. But this silence was not peace, but uncertainty. As young Zeus stood atop Mount Olympus and looked down, he realized that what he had to rule was not just a world, but a shattered reality. His father, Kronos, had built the universe on fear and the act of devouring. Zeus, however, had to establish order, cosmos. The early years of his reign were spent trying to extract law, art, seasons, and hierarchy from this chaos. Zeus's first major obstacle was his brothers, Poseidon and Hades. The 3 brothers had all played a major role in their father's overthrow, and each believed they deserved the biggest share. A traditional tyrant would eliminate his rivals, however, Zeus sought to establish the legitimacy of his reign on justice. The night of the draw, according to legend, the three brothers threw their names into a helmet. This was the first democratic, or chance-based, division of the universe's fate. The share of the heavens. As a result of the draw, Zeus became the absolute ruler of the sky and weather. This gave him a strategic advantage. He could see everything from above and reach everywhere with his lightning bolts. The domination of the seas. Poseidon was given the oceans and the earthquakes that shook the earth. Although Poseidon initially accepted this division, he secretly harbored rivalry against Zeus's authority in the early years. The realm of the invisible. Hades became the lord of the underworld and all the riches beneath the earth. Although this distanced him from the light of Olympus, it made him one of the most critical cogs in the system. In the first 10 years of his reign, Zeus transformed Olympus from merely a residence into the governing center of the universe. During this process, with the help of Hephaestus, or, according to some accounts, other craftsman spirits of the time, enormous palaces were built above the clouds. Zeus assigned a domain to each god. This was the first bureaucratic structure in history. Hestia, protection and continuity of the family hearth. Demeter, fertility of the land and the agricultural cycle. Hera, the sanctity of marriage and queenship. With these assignments, Zeus countered chaos, uncertainty, with nomos, law. Now every rain, every harvest, and every storm had a responsible party. Humanity, still in its creation phase, now knew which god to pray to. Let's better explain the functioning and administrative structure of Olympus. This structure was built on three main pillars: executive, legislative, and specialized divisions. 1. Executive Board, the three greats and regional governorates. At the top of the bureaucracy were the three brothers who governed the fundamental physical layers of the universe. However, Zeus positioned himself as primus inter pares, first among equals. Central government. Heaven's Zeus was the CEO and ultimate decision-maker of the entire system. Rather than managing weather events, he acted as a high judge resolving disputes among the gods. Department of the Seas. Poseidon, a massive subunit that managed not only the waters but also trade routes and underground tremors. Poseidon had his own bureaucracy, Nereids, Tritons, in his palace, but was accountable to Olympus in strategic decisions. Underworld and resource management. Hades. Although Hades rarely attended the Olympian Council, he served as the director of finance and population of the universe. His bureaucratic responsibility included keeping records of every deceased soul and controlling the mines, wealth, beneath the earth. 2. Olympian Council, Dodecathion, the system of ministries. Zeus divided the functioning of the universe into 12 main units. Each god was responsible for a specific concept that functioned like a modern ministry. Ministry of Internal Affairs and Family, Hera, the protection of the family, the smallest unit of society, and the regulation of inheritance law. Undersecretary of Strategy and Wisdom, Athena, transforming war from brute force into a logistical and intellectual game. As Zeus's closest advisor, Athena represented statecraft. Agriculture and food security, Demeter, calendaring harvest cycles. This was the most critical bureaucratic unit for the survival of humanity. General Directorate of Communication and Trade, Hermes. This unit managed diplomatic traffic among the gods, transmitted messages, and ensured justice in the marketplaces. Hermes was also the moving part of the bureaucracy. 3. Standardization of justice and time, the Myths and Horai. For the bureaucracy to function, the concepts of time and law needed to be standardized. Zeus, in cooperation with the Myths, divine justice, who remained from the Titan era, established the following subunits. The Myths, legal counsel, wrote the constitution necessary for meetings to be conducted properly, oaths to be kept, and for the gods not to interfere in each other's domains. Horai, seasons and order. They regulated the flow of time. They determined the calendar of the bureaucracy. This unit controlled when each fruit would ripen and when winter would begin. Moirai, destiny writers, the most mysterious unit of the system. The registry office, which drew the boundaries of life and death, something even Zeus sometimes couldn't interfere with. 4. Security and law enforcement. Physical force was needed to protect the bureaucracy. Ars, a unit of defense against external threats and chaos, but frequently supervised by Zeus due to its unchecked power. Nike, victory, the registration of success and the confirmation of legitimacy. Kratos, strength, and BIA, violence and execution unit that carried out Zeus's direct orders and punished those who violated the law. 5. Human-God relations office, cult and ritual. At the lowest but most intense level of the bureaucracy was communication with mortals. Apollo, the communication of divine decisions to humans through prophecies. Sacrifice and ritual control, the tax, sacrifices, that people paid to the gods was a symbolic price that ensured the continuity of the bureaucracy. Whether these processes were carried out properly was meticulously monitored. Result: flawless mechanisms. Thanks to this bureaucracy established by Zeus in his early years, the universe transformed from personal ambitions into an institutional functioning. Gigantomachia, Mother Earth's revenge and the cosmic war for existence. With the end of the Titanomachy, Zeus believed he had brought order to the universe. But beneath the glittering peaks of Olympus, an ancient and dark wrath was sprouting. Gaia, Mother Earth, considered it an insult that her own children, the Titans, were imprisoned in the pitch-black darkness of Tartarus and that the sky was being parceled out by the newly minted gods. For Gaia, Zeus was not a savior, but a tyrant who tore her family apart and an invader who usurped the ancient rights of the earth. This wrath gave birth to the most terrifying army the universe had ever seen, the giants. 1. The birth and anatomy of the giants. The giants were no ordinary creatures. They were born from the blood that dripped to the earth during the castration of Uranus and from Gaia's thirst for revenge. Each one was a mountain in size, their legs ending in gigantic snakes from the knees down, with dragons hanging from their hair and beards. They represented the pure, untamable force of nature, opposed to the established order, the cosmos. When Gaia incited her children to destroy Olympus, she also bestowed upon them an armor, divine immunity. According to a prophecy, no giant could be killed by the hand of a god. The only way to destroy them was for a mortal, demigod, to fight alongside a god. Giants, contrary to popular belief, are not the same as titans. While titans were the ancient rulers of the universe, giants are merely biological weapons programmed for destruction. When Uranus, sky, was castrated by his son Kronos, his blood fell into Gaia's, earth, womb. Gaia was so enraged by the suffering of her Titan children in Tartarus that she used this blood to create these colossal beings, the only power capable of overthrowing Olympus, who possessed immunity to the gods. Physical characteristics. In the texts, giants are depicted as superhuman in size and terrifying in appearance. While their bodies resembled those of gigantic warriors, their legs were often scaly, coiled, and made of living serpents. These serpentine legs symbolized their unbreakable bond with Mother Earth, Gaia, and their closeness to the underworld. 2. The most important giants and their special powers. Gaia had specially designed each giant to defeat an Olympian god. Here are some of the most terrifying names from that war. Alcyoneus, the land of immortality. He was the largest and most senior of the giants. Gaia had given him a special talisman. Alcyoneus never died as long as he fought on the land of his birth, Pallene. No matter how many wounds he received, he healed the moment he touched the ground. Zeus and Heracles could only kill him by dragging him outside the borders of Pallene. Porphyrion, the king of the giants. He was the closest to Zeus in power. During the war, he went so far as to attack Hera herself and try to abduct her. Zeus could only defeat him with the help of Eros, the god of love, filling the giant with an uncontrollable desire for Hera, leaving him defenseless, and then striking him down with his lightning bolt. Enceladus, the wrath beneath Sicily. He was the eternal rival of Athena, the goddess of wisdom. While trying to escape during a battle, Athena tore the entire island of Sicily from its place and hurled it at him. According to legend, the flames erupting from Mount Etna are Enceladus's wrath, still smoldering beneath the earth. Polybotes, the enemy of the seas. He was created to destroy Poseidon. Poseidon chased him across the Aegean Sea and finally tore a piece of Kos from the island and hurled it at him. This piece is the volcanic island known today as Nissyros. The anatomy of the battlefield. Phlegra, Greek, burnt place, is not just a geographical region, but an arena where the two opposing poles of existence, order, cosmos, and chaos, clash. The plains where this great battle, which shook Zeus's throne, took place, are a depiction of hell where the celestial light of the gods collided with the underground darkness of the giants. The Phlegra Plains are known today as the Cassandra Peninsula in the Halkidiki region of Greece. However, in mythological times, it was a volcanic corridor from which poisonous gases rose from the womb of Gaia, Mother Earth, and the earth constantly trembled. When the giants established their camps, a darkness descended as if the sun had been eclipsed. For these beings were so enormous that when they rose, their heads reached the foothills of Mount Olympus through the clouds. On all sides of the plains, gigantic blocks of rock and uprooted oak trees were piled up like ammunition, waiting to be hurled into the sky. The attack of the giants, the rise of the mountains, and the siege of the sky. In the first hours of the battle, the massive army gathered on the plains of Phlegra faced the physical impossibility of reaching the kingdom of the gods. Olympus hung above the clouds, at a height that mortals and earthly beings could never reach. But the giants, drawing power from the essence of Gaia, Mother Earth, possessed the ability to manipulate the geography like modeling clay. This phase is a terrifying process of engineering and destruction that would go down in mythology as the stock of mountains. At the command of Porphyrion, the king of the giants, thousands of serpent-legged giants advanced upon the vast mountain range of Thessaly. Using their brute force, the giants uprooted Mount Pelion. As the earth shook and the seas receded from the shores, they placed this enormous mass atop Mount Ossa. This was no mere pile of rocks, but an organic and chaotic tower reaching towards the sky. As the giants climbed these artificial peaks, each step shook the earth, their cries echoing through the heavens. Looking down from his throne, Zeus saw the stability of the universe threatened for the first time, for the world below was being torn apart piece by his children and turned into weapons against him. The giants' assault wasn't just about climbing. They used every element of nature as ammunition to extinguish the light of Olympus. They plunged their arms deep into the earth, tearing up massive blocks of rock and rivers of burning lava, hurling them towards the sky, above the palaces. The sky was illuminated by these stones, resembling falling meteors. They hurled vast oak and pine forests like spears, attempting to breach the defensive walls of Olympus. According to some accounts, when the giants' enormous bodies entered the seas, massive tsunamis formed on the shores, distracting Poseidon and keeping his defenses occupied. The true driving force behind the assault was Gaia's unending whispers rising from beneath the earth. With every tremor of the earth, Gaia pumped new strength into her children. As the giants plunged their serpentine legs deep into the ground, they absorbed the earth's ancient energy and continued to climb with tireless fury. At this stage, the slopes of Olympus transformed into a scene of utter hell. The air filled with the smell of burnt earth and sulfur. The clouds were stained black by the giants' breath. For the gods, this was not merely an assault, it was a rebellion against the very physical world they ruled. The defense of Olympus, the resistance of the heavens and divine strategy. When the giants reached the edge of the sky by stacking Mount Pelion and Mount Ossa on top of each other, the marble pillars of Olympus began to tremble for the first time. This was not just a physical attack, but an assassination attempt against the foundations of the universal order, cosmos. Zeus, acting not just as a warrior but as a commander-in-chief, transformed Olympus into an impenetrable fortress. 1. The first line of defense, the war of the elements. The defense of Olympus began not on the mountain slopes, but in the layers of the sky. Zeus divided the defense into 3 main phases. Air defense, Airless and the winds. Zeus, giving orders to Airless, the lord of the winds, unleashed terrible storms upon the giants climbing the mountains. While Boreas, the north wind, unleashed freezing storms upon the climbing giants, attempting to freeze their serpentine legs to the rocks. Notos, south wind, created dense clouds of fog that obscured the giants' vision. The fire dam, Hephaestus, the blacksmith of the gods, built enormous wrought iron furnaces on the walls of Olympus. When the giants approached, rivers of molten metal and raging lava were poured down from above Olympus. This was a burning strategy designed to slow down the healing power the giants received from Gaia. Zeus strategically placed each god according to their character and abilities. This was the first organized military discipline in history. Athena's wall of wisdom and shield. Athena was the brains of the defense. She stood at the forefront with the Aegis, Zeus's unshakable shield. When the giants reached the top, Athena repelled them not with brute force, but by finding their weaknesses. Her famous duel with Enceladus took place at this stage. Using the giant's immense strength against him, Athena destabilized him and, pressing down on the island of Sicily like a seal, buried it underground. Poseidon's counterattack with earthquakes. Poseidon descended from Olympus, causing the sea and land to shake. With his trident, he shook the foundations of the mountain masses that the giants had climbed. This constantly destabilized the giants' ladder, causing many to crash to the scorched earth of Phlegra before even reaching Olympus. Apollo and Artemis, the sharpshooter team. From the highest towers of Olympus, Leto's twins unleashed a rain of death with their silver and gold bows. Apollo targeted the giants' vulnerable points, especially their eyes, while Artemis, with her knowledge of the forests and wilderness, made accurate shots that restricted the movement of the giant's serpentine legs. The god's superiority in ranged weapons was proven when the giant Ephialtes was incapacitated by arrows hitting both his eyes. At the heart of the defense stood Zeus. Every lightning bolt he hurled from his throne was not just a weapon, but also a signal flare to the other gods. Psychological warfare. Zeus used thunder as a tool of terror. That divine sound, drowning out the cries of the giants, planted the first seeds of fear in the hearts of Gaia's children. Energy management. Instead of randomly unleashing his lightning bolts, Zeus reserved them for the strategic climbing points where the giants were most concentrated. With strikes at the convergence points of the mountains, he shattered the cosmic ladder the giants had built. Zeus's acquisition of the title Alexikakos, Repeller Protector of Evil, marked a period of universal Golden Age restoration, beyond a mere military victory. While the smoke of chaos lingered in lands watered by the blood of giants, Zeus did not sheath his sword, lightning. Rather, he transformed this victory into a lasting civilization project. After Zeus Alexikakos, cosmic restoration and the New World Order. When the dust cloud of the Gigantomachy settled, the walls of Olympus still stood, but the world was weary. With the title Alexikakos, Zeus understood that he could not rule the universe merely as a tyrant, but had to protect it. This period is a transitional phase where law, art, and social order replaced brute force. First act, universal purification and lustral rituals. War had defiled the sacred. The blood of giants had muddied the sacred rivers, and Gaia's, Earth's, body was covered with ungodly wounds. Zeus Alexiakos' first great act was to purify the universe from this miasma, spiritual defilement. Laws of purification. Zeus established the first purification rituals that gods and humans had to follow. He made Apollo the executor of this process. From then on, every being that shed blood, even in a just war, had to be cleansed by the rituals determined by Zeus before returning to society. This was the first step in the transition of law from personal revenge to social purification. Delimitation of sacred spaces. The boundaries, temenos, of temples and sacred groves were drawn during this period. Zeus placed buffer zones between the divine and the mortal, zones impenetrable to chaos. The embodiment of law, the sacred alliance with the Mys. Zeus entered into a deeper alliance with the Titan daughter the Mys, Justice Order, to solidify his title as protector. This union was not merely a marriage, but the writing of the constitution of the universe. Their daughters formed the new gears of bureaucracy. Eunomia, order ensured that societies were governed by laws. The seeds of city-states, polis, were sown during this period, under Eunomia's guidance. Dike, justice became the eye that oversees disputes between people. Through Dike, Zeus could see every injustice on earth and intervene as the protector. Irene, peace became the protector of the tranquility that followed the devastation of war. The revival of agriculture and trade was under his supervision. After the wars between the Titanomachy and the Gigantomachyon, Zeus realized this truth. Pure force, kratos, and violence, BIA, while capable of seizing a throne, are insufficient to protect it. What will prevent chaos is not more lightning, but an unshakable system of law, nomos, that defines the limits of every being. The construction of this system begins with Zeus's union with the Mys, the Titan daughter. The Mys, the divine advisor and the embodiment of justice. The Mys is not merely a goddess, but the very embodiment of the natural order of the universe and divine law. By making her his wife and chief advisor, Zeus declared that he was submitting his power to the scrutiny of law. Order of meetings. The Mys presided over the assemblies, agorai, on Olympus. She oversaw the rules, ensuring that the gods did not interrupt each other, that each remained within their own sphere of authority, and that disputes were resolved by law, not by duel. Sacred boundaries. The Mys established the principles that determined what is permissible and what is forbidden, themists. These principles were a divine control mechanism that prevented Zeus from making arbitrary decisions. Horai, the rhythm of time and society. The three sisters, Horai, born from the union of Zeus and the Mys, embodied the law by representing its different layers. For a legal system to function, time and order must be standardized. Eunomia, discipline and good laws. Eunomia is the guardian of the laws that ensure the inner peace of a society. She represents the paper aspect of the law. The constitutions of city-states, polis, were written under her inspiration. She is the guarantor of social hierarchy and everyone fulfilling their duties. Dike, earthly justice. Dike is the messenger who carries Themis's heavenly justice to earth. When an injustice was committed among people, Dike would immediately go to Zeus's throne and demand that the culprit be punished. Dike represents the judgment and execution phases of the law. With her scales, she weighs everything, and with her sword, she pronounces punishment. Irene, peace and prosperity. The ultimate goal of law is peace. Irene is the fruit of the law. She symbolizes that trade and art can only flourish in a just and orderly society. Her carrying a cornucopia emphasizes the connection between law and economic prosperity. Moirai, the upper limit of law, fate. The most interesting stage in the embodiment of law is the drawing of boundaries that even Zeus had to abide by. The three goddesses of fate, Clotho, Lachesis, and Atropos, children of Zeus and the Mys, or according to some accounts, children of the night goddess Nyx, represent the determined limit of the law. The thread of life. They draw the boundaries of a person or a god. Even if Zeus wanted to save someone from death, he could not go against the law written by the Moirai. This is the earliest and most radical expression of the concept of rule of law in the ancient world. The law is above the king, Zeus. Xenia law, the foundation of social law. Zeus Alexiakos brought law not only to the courts but into every home. Xenia, the law of hospitality, was the most important legal rule of the ancient world. Protection of the stranger. Anyone who mistreated a stranger who came to their home was considered to have committed a crime directly against Zeus. Xenias, Zeus the hospitable. Diplomatic immunity. This rule made safe travel and diplomacy possible between different tribes and cities. Law thus transformed from a moral obligation between individuals into a social necessity. The proclamation of law to people. Zeus conveyed this legal order to people through prophet kings and oracles. King Minos of Crete would ascend to Zeus's cave every 9 years to receive new laws from him. This ensured that law took on a divinely derived, theocratic, but humanly applied, practical, structure. Result: from chaos to civilization. With the concretization of law, the age of brute force represented by the giants ended, and the age of reason and justice began. Zeus was no longer just a god of wrath who hurled lightning, he was a universal balancer who held the scales, oversaw the oath, and determined the place of every being. This legal structure forms the oldest mythological foundation of Greco-Roman civilization and, consequently, of modern Western law. Zeus's greatest social revolution after assuming the title Alexikakos, repeller of evil, was taming the wild energy of the gigantomachy, transforming it into the Pan-Hellenic Games tradition. This process is the story of how brute force, BIA, gave way to sporting virtue, arete. Below, you will find a detailed account covering this transformation, the institutional structure of the games, and Zeus's role in this process. The Pan-Hellenic Games, the tampering of competition and the cult of arete. When the Gigantomachy War ended, the universe was filled with accumulated violence, not only physically but also spiritually. Gods and humans had learned to fight for survival. However, where to channel this warlike energy in peacetime was a major problem. Zeus redefined the concept of agon, competition, to control this destructive energy. Superiority would no longer be achieved through bloodshed, but through displaying skill within the framework of rules and in the presence of the gods. Transition from savagery to discipline, the mythological origins of the first Olympics. According to mythology, after defeating his father Kronos or the giants, Zeus personally initiated the first games on Olympus to commemorate this victory. However, the games were brought to earth through either Pelops, Zeus's grandson, or Heracles, Hercules, his son. Transformation of energy. The deadly clashes in the Gigantomachia gave way to wrestling, discus throwing, and chariot races. The mountains hurled by the giants were replaced by symbolic weights and discus. The sanctity of rules. Zeus personally took charge of the games. A competitor cheating was considered a crime not only against their rivals but also against Zeus's own justice, Dike. This was the birth of the first codes of ethics in the history of sport. The sacred fire and ikakeria, truce. The most important element of the Panhellenic Games was the declaration of the sacred truce called ikakeria. Under the protection of Zeus Alexikakos, all warfare ceased during the games. Suspension of war. Even if city-states, polis, were at war with each other, athletes and spectators were able to safely reach the sacred sites, Olympia, Delphi, Nemea, Isthmia. This was an extension of Zeus's xenia, hospitality, law. Rehearsal of peace. This truce was the greatest diplomatic achievement of the ancient world. People laid down their swords and sat side by side in a stadium, celebrating the greatness of Zeus. 3. Arete, the pursuit of perfection. The games were not merely a physical activity, but a pursuit of arete, virtue perfection. Zeus saw pushing the physical and mental limits of humans as an effort to approach divine perfection and rewarded it accordingly. Body and spiritual balance. An athlete had to be not only strong but also disciplined, measured, and pious. Zeus's epithet Alexikakos, the Alexikakos, came into play here, protecting the individual from their animalistic impulses, chaos, and transforming them into a civilized being, cosmos. Symbolism of the prize. Winners were given not gold or jewels, but only a sacred olive branch or laurel leaf. This was proof that success was not a material but a spiritual and divine honor. The 4 Great Games, the Panhellenic cycle. This system, established by Zeus, transformed into a cycle, periodos, encompassing all corners of the Greek world. Olympic Games. Olympia, the oldest and most prestigious games, held in honor of Zeus himself. Pythian Games. Delphi Games in honor of Apollo, including music and poetry. Nemean Games. Nemea again in honor of Zeus, commemorating Heracles' slaying of the Nemean lion. Isthmian Games. Corinth naval and athletic competitions held in honor of Poseidon. This cycle became the strongest bond that held the Greek world together in cultural and religious unity. Conclusion. From stadium to civilization. The Panhellenic Games are the most tangible earthly manifestation of Zeus's project of turning chaos into order. The savage battles with giants were transformed into honorable competition in stadiums. Through these games, Zeus conveyed this message to humanity: power is sacred only when combined with law and aesthetics. This tradition sowed the seeds of fair play and universal peace, ideas that would shape not only the ancient world but also the modern Olympics thousands of years later. The final link in the new world order that Zeus built under the title Alexikakos, the one who drives away evil, is the delicate balance he established with Gaia, Mother Earth, the most ancient and powerful being in the universe. This process is not merely the confirmation of a military victory, but also a cosmic peace treaty. Peace with Gaia, calming the earth and ecological balance. After the Gigantomachia, Zeus realized that completely destroying his greatest enemy, Gaia, which was impossible, because she is the foundation of existence, or chaining her forever would disrupt the balance of the universe. If the earth were to become angry, life would cease. The genius of Zeus Alexikakos lies in taming Gaia's destructive energy and putting it at the service of civilization. From the wild to fertile land, the Demeter factor. Zeus secured peace with Gaia through his daughter, Demeter. Lands stained with the blood of the giants and scorched by the lightning of war were rehabilitated under the guidance of Demeter. Agricultural revolution. Gaia was no longer merely a dark womb giving birth to giant monsters, but was transformed into mother, mater, nourishing humanity. Zeus ensured that the energy of the giants imprisoned beneath the earth was limited to volcanoes and earthquakes, while leaving the control of the surface to the laws of agriculture. The law of seasons. To appease Gaia's wrath, the seasons, horai, were introduced. The land would no longer yield crops year-round, but only within specific rules and time periods. This was the limitation of Gaia's unchecked power by time. Drawing the boundaries of the underworld, Tartarus and Hades. Another condition of peace was the absolute isolation of the underworld. Zeus closed the gates of Tartarus, representing Gaia's darkest aspects, with unshakable bronze bolts forged by the Cyclops. Guardianship of Hades. Hades' task was not only to govern the dead, but also to ensure that the monsters, titans and giants, within Gaia would never again see the light of day. This was a cosmic isolation agreement between earth and sky. ***. Sacred sacrifice and ritual of respect ***. Zeus legalized a debt of gratitude for humans towards Gaia. The offerings made to the earth during each planting and harvesting season were essentially diplomatic payments to appease Gaia. Through these rituals, Zeus sent Gaia the message, "We respect your power, but sovereignty belongs to Olympus." Unshakable authority and divine fatherhood, pater ***. By the end of the first years after Zeus's reign, the universe was no longer a chaotic mass, but a mechanism functioning like clockwork. Zeus had transformed from a mere conqueror, Nikephoros, into an absolute authority, Pantocrator. The legitimacy of power, from fear to consent. Zeus's success in the early years of his reign was based not only on fear, but also on legitimacy. He gave his siblings their rights by lot. He assigned areas of expertise to the goddesses. He bestowed laws and games upon humans. This sharing absolutism was the greatest shield protecting Olympus from internal rebellions. No god wanted to overthrow Zeus anymore, because they knew that if the system broke down, chaos, the titans or giants, would return. Father of gods and men. By the end of this period, Zeus fully deserved the title pater, father, which is frequently mentioned in the epics. This title symbolizes not only biological fatherhood, but also protection and guidance. The eye of the heavens, Zeus's authority is now everywhere. The presence of Zeus is felt in the flight of a bird, the flash of lightning, or the just decision of a court. Unwavering balance, Zeus has become the point of stability of the universe. He is the supreme arbiter who distributes good and evil, Ate and Dike, from the two cubes in his hands, but always maintain balance. The ultimate vision, the legacy of the Golden Age. Zeus's early years are the most productive period in human history and mythology. This period, when monsters were purged, laws were written, and art, through the Muses, began, is the dawn of civilization. Zeus did not try to stop time like his father Kronos, but rather ensured its flow by dividing time into seasons and ages. Even today, the majestic, white-bearded, and authoritative figure that comes to mind when Zeus is mentioned is actually Alexikakos, the protector, Zeus, who calmed down and attained wisdom after these stormy early years. He created a cosmos from the ashes of chaos and has forever assumed the guardianship of this order. The fall of the Titans, the depths of Tartaros and eternal exile. When Zeus's lightning bolts shattered the last Titan resistance and proclaimed Olympus's victory, an irreversible process began for the oldest and most powerful beings in the universe. The punishments inflicted on the defeated Titans were not homogeneous. Zeus determined a different fate for each Titan according to their role in the war and their potential to pose a threat. When the final blow of the Titanomachy, Titan War, was struck, Zeus used his lightning bolts not only to incinerate his enemies but also to open the gates to the deepest depths of the universe. Tartaros, this place of eternal exile prepared for the Titans, is not a cave or an underground hall. It is the boundary where even the deepest fabric of Gaia, Earth, ends, and chaos, void, begins. The mathematical horror of depth. The ancient poet Hesiod, in describing the depth of Tartarus, uses a metaphor that defies human comprehension. This description is proof of how far Zeus drove his enemies. The 9-day fall, a brass anvil thrown from the sky floats in the void for 9 days and 9 nights, and only on the 10th day does it touch the earth. The same anvil thrown from the earth continues to fall for 9 days and 9 nights, and only on the 10th day does it reach the floor of Tartarus. The meaning of distance. This distance shows how far the Titans were driven from Olympus. They were not only imprisoned, but completely cut off from the center of existence, light and life. Architecture and security, bronze walls and the threefold night. Zeus did not rely solely on the depth of this colossal prison. Tartarus is surrounded by divine engineering to make escape impossible. Bronze walls. Tartarus is encircled by impenetrable walls of wrought bronze. These walls are sealed with divine will, beyond physical strength. The threefold night, NYX, the threefold darkness of NYX, night, encircles the prison's throat like a necklace. This darkness is so dense that it would take away a Titan's sight. The flow of time cannot be perceived by the senses there. The Hecatoncheias, 100-armed ones at the gates of Tartarus stand guard, Kotos, Briareos, and Gyges, allies of Zeus. These giants, each with 100 arms and 50 heads, are the eternal guardians of the prison. Even if a Titan were to try to force open the bronze gates, it would be impossible to pass through these giants, who strike hundreds of blows simultaneously. Spatial chaos, where the roots of everything begin. Tartar is not just a cell, it is part of the universal balance. According to Hesiod, Tartarus is a damp, dark abyss, hated even by the gods, where the roots and boundaries of the earth, sea, and sky converge. The collapse of physical laws. In Tartarus, winds blow from all directions, and great storms scatter dust. This is a realm of pure uncertainty where the order, cosmos, of the rest of the universe does not function. The psychology of isolation. The Titans cannot see each other here. Each is alone in their own darkness, haunted by the dream of their lost golden age and the ringing sound of Zeus's thunderbolts in their ears. Zeus's strategic genius. Zeus's imprisonment of the Titans in Tartarus is directly linked to his title Alexikakos, the Protector. Zeus knew that the Titans were indestructible, they were immortal. Instead of killing them, banishing them out of the system was the only way to ensure universal stability. The Security Union. By using Tartarus, Zeus not only punished his enemies but also ensured the eternal security of Olympus by keeping the giants and Titans under control. Invisibility. The word Tartarus is sometimes associated with the hidden or invisible. Zeus not only imprisoned his enemies but condemned them to non-existence. As bright and orderly as Olympus is, Tartarus is dark and chaotic. The existence of Tartarus is the shadow of Zeus's authority. The Titans, who once ruled the universe, now remain as forgotten shadows behind these bronze gates. Their banishment is where the absolute victory of order over chaos is sealed. The overthrow of Kronos and the subsequent process of his imprisonment is one of the most tragic and symbolic transformations in Greek mythology. Kronos, once the absolute ruler of the Golden Age, master of the universe and time, was dethroned by his own son Zeus and condemned not only to physical imprisonment but also to ontological oblivion. The fate of Kronos, the imprisonment of the master of time and the transition to peace. At the end of the 10-year Titanomachy, as the sky echoed with Zeus's cries of victory, the inevitable end had come for Kronos. The throne he had gained by castrating his father Uranus was now overthrown by his own children. Zeus judged his father not only as a war criminal but also as a representative of an ancient order that devoured and destroyed. The overthrown tyrant, the weight of defeat. Kronos's defeat was no ordinary defeat. He represented time, Chronos, and during his reign, time was not linear but cyclical and destructive. The blow of lightning, when Zeus struck his father with the bunch of lightning prepared by the Cyclops, deep wounds were inflicted even on Kronos's immortal body. This blow was the divine seal that the father's authority over his son had definitively ended. The chaining ritual, when Kronos surrendered, he was bound not with ordinary chains, but with adamas, diamond-hard, unbreakable, chains forged by Hephaestus himself and sealed with divine magic. These chains were designed to restrict Kronos's manipulative power over time. The deepest cell of Tartarus, absolute isolation. Kronos was hurled into the depths of Tartarus along with the other titans. However, his cell was in a more special and isolated location than the others. The stopping of time. Kronos was the master of time, but Zeus struck him with his own power, imprisoning him in Tartarus, where time did not flow, only eternal darkness reigned. For Kronos, there was no longer yesterday, today, or tomorrow, only now and what is lost. The watch of the Hecatoncheias, the 100-armed giants stood guard, especially in front of Kronos's cell. Because Kronos's intelligence and cunning, Metis, were known, his cell was sealed with 3 bronze doors. Symbolic meaning, taming of devouring time. Kronos's imprisonment philosophically symbolizes the taming of destructive time. The end of the devouring act. Kronos had tried to destroy the future by devouring his children. By imprisoning him, Zeus declared that the future would no longer be devoured by fathers, but rather that children, the new generation, would determine their own destiny. The beginning of ordered time. When Kronos entered the dungeon, the wild time ended, and the ordered and fertile time, established by Zeus through the horai, seasons, began. Time was no longer the belly of a monster, but a calendar in which crops were grown. An alternative ending, the Blessed Islands, Elysium. In some mythological traditions, particularly in passages by Pindar and Hesiod, it is said that Zeus forgave his father after many centuries. The shadow of the Golden Age. According to this narrative, Zeus released his father's chains and made him king of the Blessed Islands, Elysium, where the souls of mortal heroes went. The retired king. Here, Kronos is no longer a threat, but a wise and serene memory of the distant past. This transformation shows that Zeus's authority has become so unshakable that he now feels secure enough to forgive his former enemy. The retired King Kronos's presence in Tartarus, or Elysium, persisted as an antithesis to the Olympian order. He was always a symbol of what should not be, a ruler who devoured his children, resisted change, and governed by fear. The early years of Zeus's reign were shaped by his efforts to bury this shadow of Kronos in darkness, bringing light and law to the universe. Unshakable authority and divine fatherhood, Pater. By the end of the first years of Zeus's reign, the universe was no longer a chaotic mess, but a mechanism functioning like clockwork. Zeus had transformed from a mere conqueror, Nikephoros, into an absolute authority, Pantocrator. The legitimacy of power, from fear to consent. Zeus's success in the early years of his reign was based not on fear, but on legitimacy. He gave his siblings their rights by lot. He assigned areas of expertise to the goddesses. He bestowed laws and games upon humans. This sharing absolutism was the greatest shield protecting Olympus from internal rebellions. No god wanted to overthrow Zeus anymore, because they knew that if the system broke down, chaos, the titans or giants, would return. Father of gods and men. By the end of this period, Zeus fully deserved the title Pater, father, frequently mentioned in epics. This title symbolizes not only biological fatherhood but also protection and guidance. The eye of the heavens, Zeus's authority is now everywhere. His presence is felt in the flight of a bird, the flash of lightning, or the just decision of a court. Unwavering balance, Zeus has become the point of stability of the universe. He is the supreme arbiter who distributes good and evil, Ate and Dike, from the two cubes in his hands, but always maintains balance. The ultimate vision, the legacy of the Golden Age. Zeus's early years are the most productive period in human history and mythology. This period, when monsters were purged, laws were written, and art, through the Muses, began, is the dawn of civilization. Zeus, unlike his father Kronos, did not try to stop time. Instead, he divided it into seasons and ages, ensuring its flow. Even today, the majestic, white-bearded, and authoritative figure that comes to mind when Zeus is mentioned is actually Alexikakos, the protector, Zeus, who, after these turbulent early years, calmed down and attained wisdom. He created a cosmos from the ashes of chaos and assumed the eternal guardianship of this order. Tease concludes the story of this video. Good night everyone. See you in the next video.